my name is Parastu Imami, and I'm the host of The Road to Success for Your Highly Sensitive Child. This podcast is about empowering parents of highly sensitive children to nurture their child's unique personality trait and create a path to success. Our podcast provides guidance, insights, and support to help you unlock your child's full potential, fostering resilience, confidence, and a bright future. If you're new to my podcast, please go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2 because they provide information on high sensitivity that all subsequent episodes will build upon. If you skip these episodes, you won't get as much out of this and all subsequent episodes. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com. If you're looking for a talented portrait photographer, I highly recommend Laurie Bishop of Become Studios. Check her website out at www.becomebeseen.com. You can find this link in my podcast description as well. For a limited time, if you use the promo code PARISDO100, you will get $100 credit towards photo purchases. Today's episode is a continuation of episode 43, where we talk about the similarities and differences between children with ADHD and highly sensitive children, with my guest, Ms. Karen Rosenquist. Next, let's talk about the behavioral responses. Highly sensitive children and children with ADHD can both exhibit emotional outbursts. How can parents distinguish between emotional regulation issues due to sensitivity versus impulsivity or frustration due to ADHD? I can talk about the sensitivity part while you talk.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I mean, an outburst could be a result of anything, so many things. So I think if it's something ADHD, most likely there would be other characteristics such as kind of a rigidity. Things are black and white in their thinking. It's either A or it's B, and they don't do well with vagueness. They need very concrete instructions. They have it's not just one, they have maybe outbursts at different random times, not only at school, but also in social, because you're not just ADHD at school, you're ADHD at other areas of your life as well. Again, I think because of the overlap, it's really goes back to that need to really get some professional advice, either to take your tests, see you, or if you think they meet the 4 criteria, to talk to a psychologist and rule out ADHD, maybe as a way to approach this methodically. Because it could also be something's going on that depending on what it is, it could be a reoccurring social issue with friends. But I don't, we're talking about extremes here. I'll just talk about my son, for example. He is not a kid who had a lot of emotional outbursts. He's very sensitive to sensory and whatnot, but he very much would be distracted when the academic challenge was hard to smaller things. So that was his thing, and he didn't meet criteria for the other thing, but he also met criteria for ADHD. So I think these things are just so complicated neurologically that you really need to get as much information as possible. And as quickly as possible. A lot of people tend to say, gosh, because medication is scary with ADHD, I don't want to deal with it. I want to take a different road. I want to try a lot of things first. I believe communication is about behavior and pardon me, let me restate that. I believe behavior is communication in most parts. So you need to look at what the root of what's going on.
Yes.
And, so is there a friend trauma? If it's not, then let's look at ADHD. If not ADHD, let's look at highly sensitive or the other way around.
Mhm.
But it's really important not to um, what do I say, punish the child, but look at for poor behavior, but look at what might be going on neurologically. That's a long way around an answer, but
No, no, I
uh,
love your answer. I think it was great. It was very informative, and it's also applicable to highly sensitive children. It's important not to punish them for their outbursts or not to take that as something that is negative about the child and really try to understand what caused them to have that outburst, what happened. Because if you really diagnose it, I mean, analyze it, most of the time it's because the child feels unsafe.
mhm,
And so then you have to say, why does the child feel unsafe? What happened in this situation that caused the child to feel unsafe? And most of the time, for highly sensitive children, their outburst is really crying or freezing. It's
mhm,
really rare that they would scream and or do anything else. It's most of the time is they withdraw or they cry.
mhm,
And it's important when they cry not to say don't cry. Crying is a okay, it's a very important part of our system because our body is smart to know that I'm overstimulated, I need to release it. And crying is a way of cleansing your body, of releasing those built up emotions in your body. So the first thing you want to make sure you do as a child, as a parent, as a teacher, whoever you are that is dealing with that highly sensitive child, you definitely don't ever want to tell them to not cry. And as a matter of fact, you need to say the opposite. You need to say it's okay to cry. It's
mhm,
let it out. It's okay. Because then they don't have this buildup because if they have emotional buildup, if they learn, over time you learn to suppress your cries, because you know that it's not acceptable in this society. But if you do that, you will get a lot of diseases. It's for sure because your suppressed emotions get trapped in your body, and as if they get trapped for a long period of time, that's when diseases happen. So number one is that dealing with the outburst of crying. And then if they withdraw, don't take that as them being rude. It's just that, again, that's a coping mechanism for them. So give them the space they need to process things and to calm themselves down, especially if your child knows the somatic techniques. They may not go to it immediately because they're so overstimulated. So give them the time that where they can kind of calm themselves down and use the somatic technique if they need to go to the bathroom, and you have rules at your school that they can have so many bathroom breaks. Please make an exception for highly sensitive children because they may need more bathroom breaks to go and use the techniques that they've learned because they don't want to do that in front of their friends. People may laugh at them, so the
yeah.
children may get laughed at. And so they're not going to want to do those somatic practices in front of other people. That's why they need that break to go and help themselves get regulated. But with highly sensitive children, the good news is that if they know how to use those techniques, which are very easy to use, and there's different techniques for all age groups. So it's not like, oh, my child can't do it because they're not at the age where they can do it. It's not the case. They can definitely learn because they're easy ones too, challenging ones. So it's good for all ages. So next, let's talk about parenting strategies. I know we touched on it throughout our conversation, but what parenting approaches tend to work best for children who have ADHD?
Well, and there's a number of things that help. When your child comes home from school, oftentimes they need downtime. They need to regroup and restore. And so for younger kids, it's whatever that be, just quiet time. For middle school kids, they may go in their room and just need to shut the door. It's not a time to ask them about questions, get them on their homework. It really is just giving them some space to mentally recharge. Um, Quieter places is always great. Obviously, they become overstimulated by distractions. Having some options that are quieting, it might be listening to some music and headphones. It might just be a dark room, but having potentially some space in your living area, if you have it, if you can make it where they can just there's a sense of calmness. The other thing that is helpful is being very clear with plans and not giving a lot of information at once. So if you know you have a whole day of things, tell them the whole day, but then remind them frequently of the three things that you need them to do next and check in with them. Hey, is your backpack ready? What would be in your backpack? So that they are building a mental map of what needs to be in their backpack before they go to school, instead of rushing to get in the car and then the child goes, oh my God, I forgot my backpack. And then you're triggered because they're going to be late. So it's just preparing them to think 1 to 2, 3 steps ahead and not giving them so many instructions that they can't possibly remember that. So, and giving them strategies, writing lists. Middle schoolers write lists, put reminders up. Use your child has a phone, have reminders on their phone about different things that they have to do. If your child is taking medication at school, which some kids do, have them have a reminder that goes off if they can have their phone with them. Or if they can't, ask them to put something that work with the teacher in that way to get them. But when to get to use to, excuse me, to have those reminders that they need. If they're on medication, they may have suppressed appetite. When they are hungry, really give them the food they need, because they will come down from medication and often then really want to eat. But don't bother them if they don't have an appetite. The worst thing they need is somebody to say, here, you need to eat, eat, eat. And I'm very guilty of this myself, I will say. It's one of my parenting mistakes. And Again, go find what your child is good at. Likely they are carrying around some excessive negative messages. Really make sure they know their strengths and they know what they're good at. And those are the things that most parents can do that are at home in their after school world. They can work with the school to say, here's some things that we're doing at home. Can you partner with me and we can try some of this at school. And then obviously it's easy to get triggered when kids are impulsive or have outbursts of some kind. Just count to 10 before you respond, because when you're in your own triggered zone,
Yeah.
that just escalates everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah, thank you so much. That was such empowering advice. And as I'm listening to you, I realize a lot of it would be applicable for highly sensitive children as well, because highly sensitive children do need, they do need routines. They do need a place to retreat to just kind of decompress from everything that they've been exposed to, because they're taking so much in from their environment, and because they feel so deeply when they get home from school, they may have a meltdown, right? So that's when you need to give them the space that they need to just bring themselves um,
Mhm.
down, and then also maybe remind them to do the somatic practice. It only takes 5 minutes. If they don't want to do 5 minutes, even 1 minute helps. So just give them that space that they need. And also, if they have a meltdown when they get home, you want to make sure that you because they may not, so they're now in the dysregulated state, which is equivalent to being in the fight or flight stage, so their logical brain won't work, right? So in that moment. Since yours is working as a parent, you need to think about, okay, what do I need to do to help her? So maybe a stuffed animal usually helps her. Just go grab the stuffed animal. Don't even ask, because you don't want to, this is not the time to ask questions or to talk. It's just about doing things that helps them feel better. So if it's a hug without words, if it's a gentle touch on them, it's, your child the best. You're with them so much, so what helps them. Or if it's a stuffed animal, go grab it, give it to them. Or if it's a favorite food really is very calming, especially some foods that are very soothing for a child. That works too. So it's just about really knowing your child and knowing what works and what doesn't work for them, making sure that in that moment, you don't want to be pushing their buttons. That's the worst thing that you could do. That happened to me as a child all the time. My parents just pushed my buttons exactly in the moment that I needed them to not do those things. And so it made it so much worse for me. So you want to make sure you don't do that. And you want to make sure that you really observe your child's behavior and try to figure out what is the root cause of this behavior. And also, like, one thing that you said that really resonated with me is partnering up with the school. If the child is going to school, partnering up with that school and really giving, like, I give a whole document, like a very succinct 1-page document, because nobody, at school really likes to have more documents to read.
Right.
Already busy, right? So you want to not write a novel, but just a 1-pager that is very specific to your child, that the teacher can read and go, okay, yeah, I can do this. This is manageable.
Yeah, and along those lines, one of the things, children know when they often have a diagnosis. So, if they know they're dyslexic or they know they have ADHD, they can often advocate for themselves and saying, hey, teacher, right now I'm feeling flooded. I am feeling overwhelmed, or I'm having a really hard time. I need a brain break.
Yeah.
And helping them advocate, because as parents, you're not going to be there. And if they learn dependency on you to come in and advocate, particularly when they get into the middle school and most especially high school, you're hands off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Sure.
so, it's really incumbent upon the student to say, oh, you need to advocate for what you need in the moment and be aware of, oh, here it's coming on, or, oh, I didn't, forgot my meds, or I'm feeling funny about something in the environment, and maybe you can't do anything about it, but at least to communicate to your trusted teacher, hey, I had a really hard time with
Mhm.
that. Let them know, because oftentimes teachers just aren't aware. They've got 20 some
Yeah,
kids in their
exactly.
class, and if you don't advocate for yourself, they have no way of knowing.
That's exactly right. And that's a great point, because I work with with parents of children who are in their formative years. So
Mhm.
a lot of times they're too young to know how to advocate for themselves, especially when they're like, 1 to 4 or 5 years old. So what I do is I tell my clients, make sure that you teach your children at a young age how to advocate for themselves. Make sure they know about their high sensitivity. Don't hide it from them, because if you know what you have, then you can do something about it. But if you don't know, how can you help yourself? It's
Right.
nothing to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of, that you're highly sensitive. And the more you say that, the more the society would realize that it is something to be proud of, because your child has a lot of superpowers. How amazing is it that they're in tune with their teachers? How amazing is it that they're in tune with the people around them, that they know that they have the empathy and emotional awareness to know that somebody else is struggling right now without that person saying anything, you know? Or how amazing is it that your child at a very young age learns things that you're like, oh my God, seriously? Did my child just read that sign at the age of 2? That happened to me. You know, like my niece was reading the sign that at the playground, and she wasn't even 2 years old. She was much younger. And I was like, no, it can't be. She probably, she's probably seen that and somebody read it to her. And then I went home and I told my brother, and he's like, oh, wow, did she do that? That's so cool. I've been teaching her how to read. So those are like, there are so many benefits of being highly sensitive. Concentrate on those benefits and look at them as superpowers because they are. And so teach them, like to your point, teach them how to advocate for themselves at a young age so that when they're at the age where, they can communicate better, they will be already used to advocating for
Right,
themselves. So yeah,
right.
thank you so much for reminding me of that because that's a very important point. Oh, actually, our next our next point is accommodations and advocacy. I feel like we really
And maybe covered
covered
advocacy.
that one pretty well. So, do you have anything else to say about that, or should we go ahead and skip it?
Well, accommodations, once you have a diagnosis, there are classroom accommodations that most psychologists or learning specialists will help you develop things such as letting children hear information, writing it on the board, but also giving them information on paper, um, letting them take brain breaks if they need it. Some people like wiggle fidget devices to help calm their
Yes.
children. Um, it really is child specific on what that child needs. So, but there are things that can be done in class. I don't know that extra time necessarily helps with either of these, children who are highly sensitive or children with ADHD, because their production of content is probably grade level appropriate. But if it isn't, that's certainly something one could ask for as well.
For
For
highly sensitive children, they do need more time because they get nervous. They have a very fine-tuned nervous system. So they will need more time.
So in order to get accommodations, depending on your school, you might need a neuropsychological or educational evaluation of your child before the school will offer those. You need to check and see. Sometimes to get for a diagnosis of a medical condition, it will have to be in what they call the DSM manual. I don't know what it's in, diagnostic something of medicine, but it's if you have an ADHD, it's in the DSM manual, and that will, in a public school setting, is validation of a medical condition for which you are entitled to accommodations.
Yes, yes. So for on the highly sensitive side, it's just about creating an environment that supports their unique needs. Just
Mhm.
like we talked about earlier, every child is unique. Um, if they're highly sensitive, it doesn't mean that, you know, if two children are highly sensitive, it doesn't mean that they need the same thing. It could be a possibility, but more likely they are very unique and um, they'll need different things to help them feel safe and secure and to be able to be successful. So I would say just make sure that you understand your child enough to know what accommodations would work for them and
Mhm.
making sure that you partner up with the school and collaborate with each other to get your child's needs met.
Yeah,
Because the school wants to help you, even if, because this is not a medical condition, even if it's not in a manual, the school is going to want to help you because they want the children to be successful. They get rated by that. They get rated by how well the students are doing too, right? So no teacher, I mean, that's what they're doing, that's their career. No teacher is going to want to have a student that's failing or is not doing well, right? They all want teachers want their students to thrive
absolutely.
because that's
Absolutely.
their job, right? It's like
Yeah.
me when I was in the tech world. You know, if somebody offered to help me or somebody had a suggestion on how I could do something better, I would want to know that suggestion because obviously I want my project to be the best project and to be successful. Who wants to fail in something? Nobody
Sure.
does.
Yeah, teachers have incredible empathy for their students. It's what attracts them to the profession. So
Yeah,
you can
exactly.
assume goodwill.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's talk about. I know that we have to be mindful of the time here too. We did talk about, I do have a topic here on medication and alternatives, but you covered that for some cases for ADHD kids that medication is something that would be an option for them. Can you talk about that maybe briefly? Is it for all children that need medication or is this?
Well, yeah, just to and again, I'm not a doctor, but the research that I've read shows that for most children, the most effective treatment, meaning they're focused, they can attend to their tasks, they're self-regulated. Medication is the most successful of the options. There's been some benefit in fish oil, as well as a supplement, as well as doing the work to develop the self-awareness. So I would not tell anybody just go get a pill and you're cured. You also want your child to develop and have a social emotional supports to be able to say, oh, like I said, that metacognition and that self-awareness so that they can develop the skills to self-regulate a little bit better, to recognize when they're not in a state of self-regulation. So that combined approach, it, medication is hard, and there are, you might find that your child has to try 4 or 5 different uh, medications all in the same class to find the one that has the least downside and is the most beneficial. And so patience is warranted. And then there are some kids who just the medication isn't effective. What my school has seen is by and large the children who do take medication, who do some cognitive behavior therapy, whose parents are doing those home practices, they end up really being successful academically. Their social life, they've learned, oh, I'm dysregulated, I need to go calm myself down. It has helped them tremendously. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach, in truth. And I know the medication can be scary, but I always tell people, if you had a sinus infection, you would take a medicine for it. If you had, a headache, you will take aspirin. This is a medical condition. We've tend to stigmatize taking the medication, and for kids, when that's normalized, it's so much better for them. Because they're going to be self-conscious about taking medicines if they go to sleepovers or midday they need to take a medication. It can be stigmatizing in and of itself, but when you explain that, this is just what their body needs to thrive, it becomes normal.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so important, as parents, I think if you have a child who has ADHD or who is highly sensitive, it's very important to normalize that because I don't know the percentage of the statistics around ADHD, but for high sensitivity, 20% of the global population are highly sensitive. So, and like I said, they have a lot of superpowers. So instead of, continuing this stigma, why don't we break it, break that cycle?
Right.
You have the power as a parent to break the cycle. Even if it's not for the world, you have the power to break that cycle for your
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
So it's like one child at a time, we can break that cycle and we have that power to do that. So just remember that you have that power.
Yeah, and parents tend to find support in other parents, and you find that if you talk about something and you normalize it within your friends and your family, you will inevitably meet other people who will share something, and that builds community and normalcy around
Absolutely.
what it is. So, it is really helpful to find community and get the resources because it is not always easy, and everybody's may have tips or strategies. So, it is, if you don't talk about it, though, it tends to treat it like it's something to be closeted, and it's not.
Exactly, exactly. I feel the same way about high sensitivity. I really am advocating for parents to talk about it, to be comfortable talking about it, to not see it as a stigma and to see it as a superpower instead. And in life, actually, I always believed, even when I was a child, I always believed in focusing on people's strengths. When I interacted with people, I would see their weaknesses, but I would not focus on it. I would just go,
Yeah,
oh, I can see that,
yeah,
but let's see what are their strengths. And I would
yeah,
just focus on their strengths. And I love that because it made me connect with them more. It made me see them as the amazing person that they are. But had I concentrated on their negative aspects, I wouldn't be able to even have a relationship with them because I would be so focused on their negative aspects and I wouldn't even see the positive in it.
right.
So it's just where you put your focus on, really. And I advise you to choose to put your focus on the strengths and the superpowers.
Right. Exactly. Well said.
Thank you. The last thing that I want to talk about before we wrap up is, well, two things. One is parental self-care.
Mhm.
I don't know what your thought process is around that, but for highly sensitive children, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of work for a parent to have a highly sensitive child. And if they're themselves highly sensitive, it's double the effort. Even though they will understand the child because they've been there themselves. But again, everybody is unique. So your child may be totally different than you in their sensitivity and what their needs are. But it is a lot of work to have a child who's highly sensitive. So I advise parents to take very good care of themselves. It is not being selfish. A lot of my clients say, oh, I really want a massage, but I feel selfish spending that money on myself when we have so many other things that we could be using that money for, or I don't want to spend that time on myself when I know I need to give that time to my family. But what I say is, you matter too. And
Mm.
if you're not healthy, if you're not happy, if you're not emotionally regulated, everyone around you will suffer. And the reverse is true. If you're
Yeah,
happy, if you're emotionally, regulated, if you are healthy, everybody will benefit from that. So you're not being selfish.
that's right. Yeah, I took a training once in self-care, and it was talking about how if your tank is full, you have the support you can give those around you. But if it's empty, you're not really serving your purpose. You're not doing those things that you wanted to do, and you're not helping yourself. So well, you may feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do these things because I'm not helping that other person. Actually, you are.
Mhm.
And I think it is very easy for parents to forget that, because it does feel maybe a bit entitled, and but there are lots of ways you can do it. Whatever your personal ritual is. For me, it's knitting and gardening, and those are the things that fill my tank. So when I don't do them, or when I do them and I make it a choice, it's because I know I need to fill up that reservoir, and I can
Mhm.
that I feel is going down.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so, and it doesn't take long, honestly. And the benefit is so great.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really good example, especially the gardening part. If you have a passion for gardening, it's very good for people who are highly sensitive, because it's a great way to ground yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Get
really
your hands dirty.
yeah, get your hands dirty, connect with the earth, learn from earth, observe the energy, like observe the energy. Sometimes my accent is off, so but you know what I'm saying. Take in the energy from the plants and the earth, and everything that goes along with gardening. So yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. As we wrap up, Karen, what's one thing, or maybe, however many things you want parents to take away from today's conversation?
I think the important things would be to recognize that your child has strengths. And so there may be some challenges, but to identify those strengths and really support them. And the other is to, if you suspect either, highly sensitive child or a ADHD, really get some professional support for that as soon as you can. It can take a while for parents to find the right person and get on their lists, at least. And that may not be the case everywhere that your listeners are, but certainly in my area, it can take a long time. So don't wait. It's just more information, and maybe it's just good to accumulate information, and as you said, really to see your child as a whole person, um, and recognize that these are strengths, and our role is to maybe also educate the public a little bit and people around us that we want a diverse thinker. If I always tell people, if all we had in the world were oak trees, it would be pretty boring. But we have redwoods and oaks and cedars. We have trees that lose their leaves. We have tall trees, hairy trees, trees with acorns. So you need that diversity in the world.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful way of saying it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing and for being with us today, sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. It's been such a pleasure having you on this podcast today.
Thanks, Kirstu. It's been fun. I appreciated your time.
As we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you that you have the power to create a bright and successful future for your highly sensitive child. Embrace their uniqueness, nurture their strengths, and provide them with the love and support they need. Together, we can pave a path to success that aligns with their sensitivity. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We'll be here with more insights and inspirations in our next episode. Until then, keep believing in your child's potential, because they truly are extraordinary. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and stay committed to setting your child up for success in life. To book a private coaching session with me, please visit my website at parentinghsc.com.